Well, good morning, Gospel Life Church. You've got me this morning for the weekly devotional. So we're going to be reading in Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. So Luke chapter 5, starting in verse 1. On one occasion, when the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, and he saw two boats by the lake. But the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both the boats, so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, son of Zebedee, and who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to the land, they left everything and followed him. All right, so in this passage, Jesus is calling the first disciples. So Peter and James and John. So I think this passage is one, I think it's just a fun story. You can really picture what's going on here with getting all these fish and just the excitement that would have been surrounding all of that. But I think it's also a pattern for us as we follow Christ. So just want to hit a couple points from this passage. So in verse 4, we see that Peter's initial obedience. So Jesus asks him to let down his nets. And he initially responds with, I think, a very valid response that he's been at this all night and he's gotten nothing. So, but he does say that he's going to do what Jesus asks him to do. And he does. So he does show this initial obedience. And then we see some of the result of his obedience, probably the largest catch of his life, the most fish he's probably ever seen in his nets and in his boat, so much that they needed help from another boat to get all of the fish. So if you haven't spent any time with intern Ryan yet, he is a big fisherman, and so I'm sure it's a passage that he also would appreciate, and has a little bit of a deeper understanding. He knows the experience of being out for an extended period of time and not getting anything, and then to have the result like this after such a dismal night. So what is interesting, though, is Peter understands this on a deeper level. He understands that this is something of God. He understands that this essentially is a miracle of Jesus, and he responds properly here. We look at his response that he says, "Depart from me. I'm a sinful man." He realizes he's standing before Christ. And Jesus then reveals his purpose for Peter and James and John. He's got something more important for them to do than fish. He wants to make them fishers of men. So Jesus invites them to follow him, and on faith they respond. They completely abandon everything. It seems to indicate that they left that whole big catch I'm sure that initially when they had that catch, they thought uh, how much money that could bring them. Um, but they abandoned everything, all that they know, all that they have, um, family, possessions, um, and everything that they've ever done for um, a man. They had some initial understanding who that man was, but for uncertainty, they didn't know what was going to be coming. So, what does this mean to us? Just a few key points, I think, for us. First off, obedience. Even when following God doesn't seem to make sense. Peter Peter knew that he was going into that expecting that he's going to put down his nets and he's going to get nothing. But he followed anyway, even though it didn't make sense. The next is a recognition of who we are. So Peter's response there, depart from me, I'm sinful, and an understanding of who God is, that his perfect holiness. And then finally, abandonment for the sake of Christ. They gave up everything in an instant. Um, I know, at least myself, I tend to be calculated. I tend to want to think through everything. I want to have a plan and a contingency plan, but sometimes we just need to follow. Things are just going to be uncertain, and we need to accept that and go out on faith when it's something that God's calling us to do. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day today, and I will see everyone Sunday.